Well, good afternoon. I'd like to thank everybody for coming today for the Greenbridge Mixed Income Community presentation. Actually, the fact that you're here for the very last breakout session shows that you're really committed to housing. So I just want to thank everybody here who's shown their commitment for housing. My name is Tim Walter, and I'm with the King County Housing Authority, and Greenbridge is one of our two master plan communities. It was part of our first Hope 6 application, and John is going to describe, our speaker today, John is going to give some background on the project, so I'm not going to take away from what he has to talk about today. King County Housing Authority, we're a public housing authority. We're located in Tukwila, Washington, just south of Seattle, and our footprint is all of King County, but outside the cities of Seattle and Renton that have their own housing authority. So that's our jurisdiction. And Greenbridge is located in White Center, which is just across the property line south of Seattle. Today I'd like to introduce John Eliason. John Eliason is KCHA's Director of Development and runs our Master Plan Community Program. John, if you looked at his work history, he'd be about 150 years old with all of the work experience that he brings. Obviously he's not, but he's been with the Housing Authority for 22 years, running our Master Plan Communities development work. Prior to that time, he was with Quadrant, a division of Weyerhaeuser, running and developing their Redmond Ridge, if folks are familiar with Redmond Ridge and their master plan communities. Prior to that, he was with KPFF Engineers. John is a licensed and professional engineer who's kept his engineering credentials up to date. And prior to that, he was with the Corps of Engineers. So he brings a lot of hands-on experience to the work that's been done, and we're grateful at KCHA for what he's done, and we hope that you can enjoy the presentation, and he'd be happy to answer any questions as I would after the program. So we'll get started.
Well, thank you, Tim. It's a pleasure to be here today. And again, echoing, my goodness, this is the last breakout session. Hard to believe. It's been an amazing conference. I wanted to just recognize a couple people in the audience. So we have John Hall here with GGLO. He is a principal of GGLO, and they have been our master planning community architect for over 22 years. So really great to have John here. Many others have worked. Have anybody else worked here on Greenbridge? I know we've got Nova Gradic and Tanya, so quite a few people. There's Deneen back there, yeah. So a lot of people. I think one of the things for me is I've worked on master plan communities, but this one is really special. I grew up in the area, as Tim said, White Center area, the lowest census tract for income in all of King County. And so building and doing something like this has been a passion of mine to give back to the community and really have a chance to make a difference. So what do you think of master plan communities? What do you think of? Will you dream with me a minute? If I could go down and talk, I'd be able to bring a microphone. I was thinking about that. But if you were to choose what would be in a master plan community, what would you choose? What would the characteristics be? Think about it. You'd want good schools, right? Probably great transportation, reliable utilities, high-speed internet, all the things that you would expect in a master plan community. What else? Think about it. Shout out some things if you have an idea. Yeah? Okay. Walkability, yep. Parks, recreation, things to do. Yeah. How about affordable to maintain? So it's long term, it's going to be effective. How about sustainable? How about things that make it different? Some variety, maybe some rental housing, maybe some for sale housing, all kinds of different levels of housing. If you were thinking about supporting somebody in the new homeownership programs, you'd want to bring somebody to this community because it's really a great place to be. One thing about master plan communities that I really appreciate, that you can study them, the ones that have been around for a while, and you can see that I think that the factor is about 30% of the kids that grow up in a master plan community oftentimes want to come back and have their families and raise their families there because it's been a good experience. And they don't necessarily know why, but it just works. It just fits. Some of the other things I wrote down were drainage and water quality, environmentally friendly, conserving resources. Reliable utilities is huge, so like power, you don't want your power going out all the time. So in these communities, we've about doubled the density, so it's been a huge deal working with all the utilities companies to make all of that happen. Parking. You don't want to come home at night, right? And you don't have a place to park after you've been out and have an activity. Services. How about a library? Access to health care. All of these things are important when you look at a master plan community. All of these things fit. And so what I wanted to do, when I start a project, I try to keep in mind one thing, and it's a tough thing. I always try to begin with the end in mind. It's an old Covey principle if you've studied any of his work. But what's really tough to do is figure out what that end is, right? And so what we've been talking about here are some of the characteristics of what that end might look like. So you get 2 master plan communities today. I have a video that I was going to play for you, and it's for a smaller master plan community called the Seola Gardens. And it was completed in 2017. It's about 30 acres. And I was going to play this for you. But when you watch the video, think about those things, those characteristics that might help you believe a master plan community is a really great idea. So.
After nearly a decade, the completion of KCHA's Seola Gardens has dramatically transformed the community in White Center and transformed the lives of the Ellison Long family.
Thank you, God, for helping us, and we want to also...
Julius, he is 19 years old, and he's a special needs, and I love him to death, of course. We came from deplorable conditions. I was so glad that and thankful to just be in here, and I'm just thankful. I'm really and truly thankful.
Walk-in shower, and this is for my handicapped son, okay, and he got his sitter in here where I can shower in, you know what I mean? And we didn't have nothing like that. We couldn't even get him in his wheelchair in our bathroom before we moved here.
It was nearly 75 years ago when public housing was first created here for defense workers during World War II. In the 1960s, those wartime houses were replaced with Park Lake Homes II. By the turn of the 21st century, the 1960s buildings had reached the end of their useful life, which presented an opportunity.
This was originally older housing that was dilapidated, and we wanted to completely rebuild it. So we applied for a Hope 6 grant back in 2009. We were successful in that grant, and the project started from there.
As with nearby Greenbridge, KCHA applied for a HUD Hope 6 grant to create a new community. Nikki Parrott coordinated writing the grant with contributions from Resident Services, Hope 6, and Asset Management.
There's no way to measure the difference between what was here before and what is here now. It's so far improved that there's really not a measurement that I can put to it because of the changes that have been made. And it's also the improvements in the community itself, in the fabric of the community. We now have residents here who own their homes, residents who are in public housing, and some folks that are in between in terms of their income. We have parks and infrastructure and accessibility that is all just dramatic improvements over what was here before.
What I really enjoy about this is you can't really tell what the affordable housing is and what the market rate housing is. It kind of all blends in together. Plus all new infrastructure, new right-of-way, everything. We reline the storm system. We replace a lot of it and we reline a portion of it. It's all new utilities. Everything is pretty much brand new.
The new community was built in phases, but demolition of the old buildings couldn't start until Resident Services and the Hope 6 relocation team helped residents move off the site. First came new utilities and other infrastructure. Next was construction of rental properties called Zephyr. Then came senior housing at Joseph House and another phase of rental properties called Fairwind. 44 of the previous residents returned and moved into these new units at Zephyr and Fairwind. Also in this phase was renovation of the old Highline Head Start building. Finally, 2 phases of single-family homes.
So I went over and talked to the housing people and told them my situation about I had a disabled wife and a disabled son, and they started talking to me and working with me. And before I knew it, I had filled out some paperwork and I landed here. I thought it was a miracle.
And while the construction project is done, it's worth remembering that it took a team effort and that KCHA staff continue to work hard to deliver critical services at Seola Gardens year-round.
One of the things I'm most pleased with is just the collaboration of all the different parts of KCHA, whether it be Section 8 or Resident Services developing a relocation plan that was state-of-the-art and at the time, to helping the people with case management down the road, to asset management department that helps to manage and finance the financing and compliance of all the housing, to public housing that really manages the entire site, so they have full control of all the rental housing at the site.
KCHA Resident Services also supports renters with housing stability and with help connecting to an array of services on site. From visits by the White Center Food Bank, to after-school activities for students, to other special programs. And now the people of Seola Gardens are hard at work too, building a new community.
Because that's what this is all about here, is love. You know, you have to love your neighbors just like you love yourself. And that's what it's gonna take to help this program grow and understand it. People understand it. I know a lot of people here need this. And, you know, it's gonna take that type of love to grow around here.
In the summer of 2017, renters and homeowners officially celebrated the completion of Seola Gardens. It's a 30-acre community with 177 new rental units, including 65 apartments for seniors, as well as 108 market-rate homes. Now, neighbors are working together to create a harmonious place where everyone can thrive.
One good thing about it, you can walk around here and feel safe.
Yes.
And where we were before, you didn't feel safe. We couldn't walk around, you know, and now we can all go out and walk around or go. Yeah. My kids feel like going to the park. I'm not worried about them.
Along with Greenbridge, Seola Gardens is part of KCHA's commitment to help revitalize White Center. Since the early 2000s, KCHA has invested millions of dollars in public and private funding to build new housing and expand services available to residents here. Completion of Seola Gardens is fulfillment of KCHA's promise, providing a beautiful new community with housing for low-income seniors in Joseph House.
The residents have access to a wonderful community center that is part of the Joseph House development. They have wonderful parks to play in. We have art that's fantastic.
Seola Gardens is also for families with children and subsidized apartments. and for market rate homeowners. With a complement of services including a P-Patch, Technology Access Foundation, and Head Start. And Lakewood Park and other places to play are nearby too.
And then there's also a couple of schools around, so they got hoops, and there's parks and everything. Everything's close together, so you can really find something to do pretty easily. All you have to do is just step outside. It's really fun.
Like all the work that KCHA does, Seola Gardens is at its heart about transforming lives through housing.
When you see a project like this, it's not an accident that all the infrastructure is sized for the buildings that you're building. New roadways are sized and work for the roads that people build the homes on. All the utilities are in the right places. All of the parks are situated with trails to create a walkable community. All the buildings are sustainable, and all of them have a 3-star rating and a Built Green underlying process. So this is not only just for today, should be here well into the future.
The best community a person could live in.
Yes.
Yeah. Yes, indeed.
All right.
Thank you.
So while the credits are running, I wanted to call out Nikki Parrott, who is working on the Hope 6 grant. She broke the glass ceiling, I would say, as she is now the capital construction vice president. So she manages all the construction for our public housing at KCHA. And she's just amazing. I've known her for many years, and I'm going to miss her, unfortunately, because she is retiring at the end of the month. But as you can see from the credits, it takes a village to make this happen. You have a great team, you have a great set of engineers, a great architect, all the pieces of the puzzle to make that happen. So what did you see from your characteristics that we talked about, the things you thought were important? What did you see in the video? Were they all there? Were there more that we didn't mention? That's your quiet crowd. How about safety? Did you see safety? Yeah, huge. So each of these involves sheriff department and police, and looking at our master plans and making sure, if you saw the buildings, you'll see windows on all corners, so there's eyes on the street all the time. Community center. There was another one that we didn't mention. That was a beautiful community center at this site. Others that you saw or didn't see? Density, yeah. The density is doubled on this site, and the actual impervious surface is cut by about 30%. So that goes to the ecology and the environment. You saw a big pond in there, and that's a state-of-the-art sand filter pond that protects the downstream lake that drains to. So environmental sustainability is all part of the goal. Anything else? Anybody see? Mix of housing types. Real variety, yeah. So lots of different types of housing is there. Parks and trails you saw there. So there's a parkour course that people walk every morning, and they can go and do exercise as they walk in the morning. Yeah.
I was just curious if ongoing services available for people. I recall, what was it? An after-school program, but I'm curious if there are any case management services for adults or seniors or anything else within the community.
Yes, there's a wide variety of services that have been maintained. So one of the tricks as we were redeveloping was to maintain all the services so they didn't go out of business while we redeveloped. So the relocation plan actually helped to help the people and care for them when they were away from the site, and then they were able to move back, and then the services were still there when they came back. So there's computer labs, there's English as a second language, there's all kinds of things.
As a percentage of the total units, what's the bedroom spread, and ADA units, any breathe easy units?
Beautiful. There's another one that is a key thing for master plan communities is everything should be accessible, right? So the sidewalks, the homes, the number of units, all working to be accessible and work. As far as Breathe Easy, yes, we had some programs where we worked to have a vacuum cleaner available and started to teach about that. And then they have a limited number of carpet in the housing itself. So this is great because you're bringing out all the characteristics.
I'm just curious, did you consider any stores, like little markets or anything like that in that?
There is a mixed-use building, but we don't have any stores in this one. So that was a hope, but it was not quite possible, not enough rooftops to support it.
How many total units? You said
30 acres. I believe there's over 200 units. So, all right, well, so you got a sense of Seola Gardens, kind of, and the end in mind, you would say, here's all of the characteristics you would want to see in this community. And would you want to live there? You know, that's the kind of end of the line question. So I'll go to some of the Greenbridge slides so you can kind of see some things. I want to keep moving. I put up a couple of my favorite slides first. And so this is the Corner Park. It's a park that really was built for marketing for land. At Greenbridge and at Seola Gardens, one of the main funding sources, along with tax credit funding and grants and 202 funding, land sales were part of the overall funding. So we wanted to make sure the land was worth as much as possible. So this park was built prior to the land sale. And this is a artistic sign. We were able to keep some trees, so that was another one of the environmental goals. And over here you can see the bus stop, bus shelter. So that was the transportation one we were talking about. There's the shelter again, and we do a little bit of art at Greenbridge. I was a little scared of art because I was afraid that it might cause or get damaged, but we haven't seen it. What we've seen is really more care and a sense of community that the art has created. At Greenbridge, there's about 80 pieces of art that we've put in, and that's been part of our budgeting all along to build an amazing community. Here's the Grand Stair. This is east-west. This is Connor Homes and BDR Homes. So we have this match line here. All the utilities are coming down here serving the site. And you can see in the stair, we've got a poem. So I won't tell you what the poem is. You'll have to come out to Greenbridge and see it, but you get to walk up the stair to read the poem. So master planning, we did lots of work, a very intense process. We had a community task force of people that were partners that were working together to create this community. Business from White Center, the library, just the group of people was supporting this and building the project were just amazing. The residents, you can see here, was one of our community meetings. This was a smaller community meeting. And here the residents that were living at Greenbridge got a chance to say, hey, you know, this is what we want. We had 32 languages to deal with, so it was really challenging. So we found a way to put up pictures like this, picture boards, and we gave the residents different colored dots to tell us what they liked and didn't like. So a green one they really didn't like, a yellow one was kind of iffy, and then a red one was, no, absolutely not. Reverse, green was good, red was bad. So community partners that were involved, you can list there. The King County Sheriff was heavily involved in all of our design and reviews so that we were able to create safe communities. Franchise utilities were also there because we had to double the density, so we had to double the density of all the communities. And if you work from home, today at Greenbridge, we have some of the fastest internet speeds that you can get. This was Park Lake Homes in White Center in 2000, before we finished. You can see it from the air if you were flying into SeaTac, if you ever looked at it. The community center area was right here. This is the only building, this is the Wiley Center that was left and not demolished, and even the Wiley Center got a big rehab. So you can see the barrack style, very monotonous. It was, colors were kind of a faded blue vinyl and a faded yellow vinyl, and so they were really, really livable, but dilapidated. It's amazing the Housing Authority worked so hard to keep them going so long because they did fill a need, but it was time to replace them. Here you see the White Center Heights Elementary School. It had been abandoned, and that's where having funding, for the schools is really important. They had re-roofed their school, and it was wet underneath, and mold turned in, so the ceiling tiles were falling on the kids with mold. So they had to abandon the school, so that when we got there was no school. They were busing the kids to different schools that might have capacity. Here's a shot of the homes that were built in the really early 1940s, and there's a huge, just wonderful history. The people that lived here built the B-17s at Boeing, built the Liberty ships at Lockheed, and so these were people that our country needed working. And this was really just wartime housing put up quickly to be able to meet that need. Here you see we took one of the areas in the lower left, south of the site, and we rebuilt it so that our services could stay, to your question, in business. So here was the Southwest Boys and Girls Club, one of the partners. They had a building, neighborhood house. They have their services they provide. King County Sheriff had an office right there and now has a storefront. YWCA, neighborhood house. So we kept all the services going while we relocated and did the core. This was an example of some of the bigger, larger White Center community improvements and revitalization. This was the rehab of Arbor Heights. It was the highest call center, response for the sheriff in all of King County. And so working with King County and buying this property and then rehabbing it, we've turned it into an amazing family development. This was Mallard Lake. It was owned by a developer who had let it go, pretty far south. And so this was re-syndicated and had new financing. We helped with that so that could be completed. And then we worked with the school district to create a bond for replacing the White Center Elementary School so that the community would have a school. So that comes back to the characteristics, right? A great school, part of a great master plan community. Here's what Jeff Foster, the principal at GTLO working on master planning said. He said, we studied and studied, and we did 180 public meetings. So we would have a meeting room, a gym, and we would have multiple speakers, and we would have translators for all the different languages. And so I learned so much in that process. I learned I could only speak about a third as fast as normal. I don't speak super fast, but I could only speak a third as fast so that and then I would have to get eye contact with the translators to make sure that they had been able to translate what I said and then back, and then I couldn't use any technical terms at all. So that was really challenging, but we got all this input. We had thousands of pages of data that came in. And so this was the result of the master plan. And what I remember is how my sense of this was in a master plan community, you don't necessarily make all the decisions. You find out what people want and you try to meet those wants. You can't meet them all, you can't afford them all, but you try. So we also did an equal charrette. This was part of the environmental side of things. We wanted to improve the site ecosystem and to conserve the natural resources, like we talked about some of the characteristics. Then we set standards. So we were meeting the Built Green 3-star for communities, which there are 5 of those in the Northwest. Greenbridge is one. And that's the communities, not the buildings, but the community. So that's the site infrastructure, essentially. I see a couple head nods. This is good. Good. So we set those goals. This is O'Brien and Company, and this is one of the eco charrettes we had and supported King County. Here's that old master plan of the original site. We worked on entitlement next, and so this was the sort of beginning of the next phase. And so how did we do it? You know, you see some key King County Council members here. Here's Rob McKenna. Here's Dow Constantine right there. So some very key things. And then Ron Sims was incredibly supportive of what we were trying to do. He was one of our biggest cheerleaders at the high level. And so that was fabulous to have the support. We processed a demonstration ordinance so we could change a bunch of codes. And that was really important to do what we needed to do to make the project amazing. So how do you transform a suburban code through new policy? Oh my goodness. So we would you know, Seattle was right across from Roxbury from us, and they did things we couldn't do. And it would be really funny. Our consultants sometimes would say, oops, Seattle does this, why can't, well, that would make King County really mad. So we didn't do that. We reframed everything so it wasn't about what Seattle was doing, it was about what should be done. So we had a dedicated team, and then we parallel processed all the infrastructure permits and the building permits. And so that meant usually you have to go, you know, in series. So you get one, and you get one, and then you get one, and then you can get another. So entitlement with multi-stages and strategies. So these were all things we did. We changed over 100 King County codes to make it what you see. These were entitlement. We did a full EIS. Because we had HUD funding, we had to do SEPA and NEPA EIS. So that was another big step to get through. King County Housing Authority leads the SEPA process, and King County led the NEPA process. We worked on flexible development standards. So we had density that was set up in the core. So you see a range of density, and in the red area, we could do things like zero lot lines, so we could bring the buildings right up to the street to create more urban design. Parking and circulation was a huge change because the EIS had two alternatives. One was if it was the standard King County code, and one was if we could make all these code revisions. The standard King County code was a sea of asphalt. And so we did the same thing at Seola Gardens, and we were able to double the density and reduce the impervious surface by 30%. The project is, Greenbridge is governed by the design guidelines. So these are all the things that we thought were important coming out of a lot of the community meetings. So you have to have at least 3 colors, and that was a contrast from the monotonous buildings. You have to have corner windows for the sheriff. You have to have individual doors. Those are just a couple of things that came out of all the community meetings to make it work. So those are true for all of the buildings that we built and all the new buildings that are built into the future. Public spaces was really important. Here's my favorite picture again with the trail. But parks and recreation, we have pea patch here, so all the people can enjoy time together from whatever part of the community you come from. This is the Central Park, and this is a mural that was based on the 58th master plan. So an artist took the 58th master plan and said, this is what I want to build. So it becomes the backstop for all kinds of community events and all kinds of music events, and so that's the plaza. And then the brand new school, here you see, I showed you the elevation of it before, but here it is. Diversity in design, this was a tough one. We wanted lots of different architects with lots of different pens, lots of different ideas. While GGLO was the main master planning architect, you can see the list is quite long, and it's a challenge. You know, once you have an architect and you're using an architect and you get to know the project, you have to teach a new architect the same thing over and over. So lots of challenges, but what it ended up with was lots of diversity in the types of plans and types of looks and colors that we have at Greenbridge. Here's the Educare. This was in process. This is Head Start. I call it on steroids. It was originally done and set up by Christine Gregoire in the Thrive by Five system, and then Bill Gates and the Gates Foundation came and helped to fund it. We have a variety of housing. We have a diverse community. We have it. These are the characteristics, right? This is kind of the end in mind that we were talking about when we started. Sustainability, when you see the housing, it's here for a long time. That's our goal. We don't want to have to rebuild it anytime soon. So these were some of the ideas and the sustainability, and most of these required code revisions so that we were able to accomplish them. And I wanted to point out, Michael asked me to talk about solar-ready buildings. And so we really wanted to promote that right out of the gate. So the first building that had rehab was that building I showed you that was the only one remaining. This is the Wiley Center, and sure enough, right out in the front, really setting the precedent. This was about 2004, was an 8 kV solar system. Sixth Place and NIA, and then the homeowners. So here's Sixth Place Apartments. This is really innovative. Sixth Place Apartments it holds all the records for fastest development of its kind ever in King County, and that record probably will never be broken. This was when we had ARA and we had some downturn in the economy. We had really strict goals to meet. So 25 units were built with roadways, public roadways and utilities. From start of design to occupancy was 18 months. So public utilities don't happen overnight, as you probably already know. New property lines and platting doesn't happen overall. So all that was parallel process, so it would work, 18 months. And the solar system was on there for Michael. Where'd Michael go? Hey. It was a 52.8 kVA system, the biggest residential system when it was built. More have been built since. This is an example of more solar. This is a zero lot line townhome for sale, and the person that owned it wanted to put solar. And so we have an association that manages and maintains the for sale townhomes attached. So we have a special set of agreements to allow for them to be recorded on their property to pull the solar panels off to be able to re-roof, and then they can put them back on. But I think we have 15 on solar panels all working, and people are happy on zero lot line townhomes right now. So during construction, we had a lot of controls, and we wanted to make sure that people really were careful with the environment. And so one of the big things that we did is we had a huge 100-acre site. So we would do a phase, and our architects would be far enough along that they would know what the foundations look like. And so we would have our infrastructure contractors build and grade the roads, the utilities, and everything, get them all set up, and the subgrades for all of the housing. We also balanced all those sites so they were balanced, so they didn't have import or export needed to make those happen. We believe we've saved about 2,000 trucks off the road by doing that, reducing our costs, reducing infrastructure damage, and improving safety, because you've got a lot of trucks leaving the site. They're not real safe. Resident engagement, you know, I remember back in my days of Quadrant, if I didn't make a deadline, I was a goat. But the worst thing about it was they could have $40,000 more per day of interest carry. So that was the worst part. And I thought to myself when I was working on Greenbridge, yeah, there's that. There's the financial side, and that's important. And we made a lot of our dates, and most of them actually. But where I really felt the pressure was the residents that needed this housing. I didn't really see that coming. These were the first residents that moved into Greenbridge. The community plan looks like this right now, 2024. This is the 109th community plan. So lots of planning, lots of work. Has really accomplished a lot of puzzle pieces. And I look at it like a big puzzle. If it fits together like a glove, it worked. If it doesn't, we can't have a road that doesn't match up with the road that we just built. Can't have a utility that doesn't match up or missized for the next phase. So, and then you add the characteristics, and that really increases the number of levels of complexity, because you want all those service tips to be going. So each of the colors you can see is a different phase. Right now we're working on that. Last big for sale. Here's the unit count I think someone was asking about. At this point, we're still working on that. We still have some work to do, but you get a sense. It looks like we're entitled for up to 1,100 units. Looks like we're going to be right around 900. This is an example of one of the renderings we would do to set the precedent for what we were going to do. This was done by GGLO. This is looking at this same park that I showed you, one of my favorites right up front. There's the sign, and there's the existing tree that's saved. And what's amazing is it looks just like that when we're finished. This was a rendering of what Division 8 would look like. This is our last land sale. The park we just looked at, whoops, I'll go back. The park we just looked at is right there. And so you can see the infrastructure designs and platting we had planned to do. 107 units of single family homes in this case. This was the highest value land, so we saved this one for last. Here's some double-sided homes, and you can see on 4th Avenue. This was done by one of the architects, Nash, one of the builder architects. So we've got 2-sided homes. Most builders would just put a big fence on 4th Avenue and isolate that site, because it's a lot of work to put these and make it relate to the site. So here's an example of how it looks. There it is in actual construction, that same rendering. Right here, the double-sided homes, you can see they've got 2 sides, and there's those stairs that come down and embrace 4th Avenue. We have a little fun too. Do you see a dinosaur in that picture? Yeah, we have a lot of fun too, because this is the dino park here. There it is. So you can kind of see it from the ground, but you kind of got to see it from the air to understand it. Here's another one of our sets of parks. And one of the things that Kevin Preston said in the previous video is one of the things we've, I think, accomplished is that you really can't tell where the deeply sized rental housing is and where the market rate is. So send a landscape architect out there and try and have them figure out what project they're working on. It's really a challenge because it looks so much the same. I wanted to thank you all. And then, we just happy to answer questions. I'm not sure if there are any, but we're kind of running out of time. Yeah.
How many units were on the site? How many households were on the site, and did they get right to return? And how many of them did, if they did?
There were originally 569 units on site. Each of the people, they were relocated in phases. So as they were relocated, they received a lottery number, and if they were in good standing, they were all able to come back. They were relocated into new places. Some of them liked where they were, so some of them stayed, but a lot of them came back. Hello. Yeah.
Is this on?
My name is Ahmed. I'm with Seattle Housing Authority. I am part of the Greenbridge community for so long. I have lived there since 2009 to 2018. So my question is, I was a multifamily person. So I was renting like 3-bedroom in that area, and it was so affordable. So in the future, do you plan, to build more affordable, homes, or did you sell all the land to the developers?
Well, we've sold most of the land that we have and built on most of the land we have. So We're still working on one we call the Notch, and we still don't know what that's going to be quite yet. We don't know what it wants to be when it grows up quite. So.
Hello, my name is Camille. I ask this question coming from, I wrote my master's thesis on public housing models in other countries. And so I'm curious if KCHA has retained ownership of any of the market rate units, and I have a follow-up depending on the answer.
All the land was sold for market rate housing, and so part of the mission was to return some of the land to the tax rolls. So all of that land that was sold to builders that sold then the market rate homes, actually now those people that own those homes pay taxes in for services and community development.
Okay, and then my follow-up question then would be, so I totally understand that having the property taxes from that is a super valuable thing, but there's also a lot of places around the world and even within our own country that retain ownership of the higher income market rate housing in order to be able to let the books sort of balance themselves out between the market rate and the low income housing. Is there any plans in the future for KCHA to do something like that, or is there a reason that, that you've decided not to go with that model?
So all of the rental is currently in partnerships that King County Housing Authority still owns the underlying land, and they're in 99-year leases pretty much. So the rental is set up that way, but we haven't gone that far on the home ownership.
So for the I guess the sell, you sold all those. I was going to ask, which units were the hardest to sell or to lease up? You have probably had some subpopulations in mind, working with other organizations. Did you have trouble leasing up at least some of the units for certain subpopulations?
Well, as far as the rental leasing, we worked really hard. We worked hard to finish the construction so it was all complete. So when people were able to move, they moved right away almost. So it would leased up almost immediately. And the bedroom mixes were set up based on our wait lists. So it was like, okay, here's people coming on, and the wait lists were pretty consistent with what we needed for the family sizes so they could move in quickly.
Mm-hmm. So one other question real quick. With the master plan, you mentioned you had over 100 revisions. What were the primary reasons for those? And was that, did that hinder your progress in development much, or was that just part of the plan or part of what was expected?
It was a combination of things, I think. Each of the phases we wanted to make better than the last. So it was sort of like, if we do this or that, it could make a little bit of a change that would make it better. But we had to update the master plans to make sure everything would still fit. There was one case where we thought we could put bridges over swales. And so one of the areas in the development we were working on was treating stormwater with swales. But it really wasn't feasible to have driveways over swales. So we made some changes, in the access of those units to make sure that we had good access and we could keep those swales so they were not terribly expensive, number one, and two, they really need the air and the sun and all to grow and be successful. So that was an example of one we didn't catch in the initial planning. Went over that way back.
So I'm curious, as far as ownership goes in the HOAs, are you guys still involved in all of the HOAs, or somewhere there's commercial or private sale housing on part of those HOAs?
Yeah, the CC&Rs are recorded on all properties for both Seola Gardens and Greenbridge, and that requires that there's a association. So we've studied that at length and worked with Seattle actually a little bit. Learned from them. We ended up building one association for each property, and so because we have so many rental units, they take King County Housing Authority has to stay involved.
Were there any LIHTC units in there?
Oh yeah.
Okay. So what was the percentage of LIHTC? I mean, just really quickly, the
almost
funding.
all
Okay.
all of them. Yeah.
Yeah.
question in the back. I just want to, the one question about the association, that's been one of the things that any folks who are looking at doing master plan communities would encourage you to really consider, is you're in it for the long term. And so you're going to want to make sure that you have a voice at the table, and being part of the associations is critical. As a matter of fact, I was president of two of the associations for many years. John has been the president for many years and has been on the board since inception, basically. Other staff is on the board, but our participation on the board has been absolutely critical in part of ensuring that the vision of the community really comes to fruition and stays that way. So.
I had a question about, White Center is an unincorporated area, sort of an island surrounded by incorporated municipalities. And I realize that you're the King County Housing Authority, but this is a huge parcel. And I was just curious if there was, and if you discussed it earlier and I missed it, I apologize, a discussion about possible annexation, given that it's such a massive land holding. Thank you.
We had a lot of discussions with Seattle and Burien. Neither one has come to the table so far, but I will say, part of the forward thinking is that all the utilities, roadways, and infrastructure as a whole is designed to Seattle standards. And that took a lot of work because we want to make sure that if it was annexed, they could take it over easily.
Just like to add one thing on that. So from an annexation standpoint, if you're a public housing authority and you're in an area that's annexed by a housing authority or another jurisdiction that has a housing authority, you retain the ownership and operation of the property that you owned prior to the annexation. So we actually thought this would be a great thing if Seattle annexed the property, because Seattle had so many more services available to offer the folks who live there than King County did. And so, as John mentioned, it was built with the foresight of building things to Seattle standards in many ways. So we would actually think at this point it's a good thing if that were to happen. But the King County Housing Authority would retain ownership and operation of the site.
Can you describe any sort of lessons learned now that you're into probably a lot of the replacements needed and things like that, some of the building materials and systems? What were some of the mistakes? Anything over-designed or underdeveloped with the project?
Well, we would take lessons learned from each phase and try and make them better. That was really our hope. And so one of the things that happened is that we're using hardy siding as an example, but hardy trim wasn't available. And so we used, a good cedar quality, but as hardy trim became available, we decided to incorporate that into not only, all the trim around the windows, all the fascia, everything. And hardy trim is amazing if you've used it. It takes paint so well. You don't have to paint that as quickly in the same intervals. One of the things we've done is we're talking about for maintenance and long-term, trying to keep those costs down. And so that was one of the things we implemented. Another thing we did was we thought at the rental might be have a sub-meter where we would create the ability to sub-meter the units so that we could keep track of how much water was going where. We never used that. But each of the units has cold water coming directly in, and then it's branching so that could be done in the future. But that could be implemented in the future if we decide to. Recycling is one of the challenges in our housing, I would say. We tried to implement that with all of our resident services. We went from dumpsters for the most part to single cans, and we studied that, tried to make it work. And it's just there's a language gap. There's some challenges trying to get our residents to be able to realize, okay, the blue one is recycle and the gray one is not. It's garbage. So we're still working on it. We're not done. It's a work in progress. So those are things that I would say we're trying to learn and improve.
I'd say one of the things that we have learned has been very helpful is we've been grateful that the management company who operates and manages the rental communities also has an arm that does some association management. So they have been able to provide management of the association, and even though they may tree up to different, portfolio managers within their organization, the ability to have staff cross-support each other at the site. So if the association maintenance person who would go around or pick up and clean up the garbage is on vacation, somebody from the rental could come over and take over and assist with that, and vice versa. So it's been really helpful to be able to have kind of some consistency there and not kind of feeling like we're at odds with different organizations. That's not my problem, that's your problem. No, that's your problem, not my problem. So that's been helpful.
Yeah, I had to step out, so I might have missed this, but how does the association collect fees or get paid or run operation-wise, like an HOA, for both the rental and the home ownership?
So the CC&Rs give authority to collect dues, and then there's two kind of categories. If you're just on a single-family home, it's just a general assessment. And then if you're in a townhome, you get a general assessment plus a supplementary assessment. And so there's authority in the CC&Rs to do that. And then those assessments are based on reserve studies that are done every year to try and make sure that it's working. So that we test to make sure we got enough reserve money, and we test enough, make sure we got enough operating money to maintain the community in a beautiful way.
We're almost at 12:15, so maybe we'll do one more question, and then if folks have other questions, John and I would be happy to stay around afterwards and talk to any folks who would like to continue a conversation. Any last question? Deneen, any last question? Anybody else? Okay. All right, well, we want to thank you for coming, and again, John, you've done an amazing job, and we're grateful for all the work you've done.